Jeff from Two Hacks Garage. Well, it's been a busy day in Jimmy's shop. We've been making a whole lot of headway on the 388 cubic inch small block stroker that we're putting in my friend Todd's 1980 Z28 Camaro. We're at a point now where we're ready to start on making this thing almost ready to fire. Next step on this is installing an intake manifold. And seeing that we're going to be using an engine platform that has a camshaft profile and heads that like to make a lot of power from mid to high range power, we decided to go with a single plane intake manifold. The one we chose, well, it's a Holley design. It came directly from Holley. It's a quality product, lightweight aluminum, and it's a single plane. This thing is going to provide the airflow, the fuel delivery it needs to make this thing rev and make a whole lot of power. But before we get started on installing this, Jimmy, what he's been telling me, it's an old drag racing trick. In order to make these things seal properly, he uses acetone to wipe down all the mating surfaces. Now, we are going to use Felpro gaskets on this, but in some cases, you're going to use a little bit of weather cement on the China rails with the cork gaskets and maybe even some RTV silicone to really make it help seal. Also, to make it help seal, what we're going to use, just like everything else on this engine, we're going to use ARP bolts. ARP makes a really good quality product, really easy to use, secures very well, and you know what, guys? These don't really break too easily. Mind you, yeah, we're installing an intake manifold. There's not a lot of pressure on it, but you might as well go with quality product on that. I'm talking, Jimmy's working. We're going to have to get to it, guys, but in this episode of Two Hacks Garage, Jimmy and I are going to install this Holley single plane intake manifold on this 388 cubic inch small block Chevy stroker. See you in a few. All right, so real quick, as we just talked about, Jimmy cleaned the China rails off with the acetone cleaner. That's basically to get any grease, oils, or debris off of that and make a nice clean mating surface. He uses a weather strip cement and he puts it down on that China rail, and what he's doing is he's putting the cork gasket over that. That pretty much just almost permanently seals that, allows for it to not have any leaks. That's an old drag racer trick. It works very well.
Tough to get off.
It is tough to get off. So he's going to do the same thing over here. He's just going to spread some of that cement around.
The reason I like the cork versus the rubber is the simple reason is the cork, rubber is always soft and pliable, and the cork is not so pliable. So in a drag racing world, where you're zinging down the track at 150 plus, the cork seems to hold better than some of the rubber end pieces, and the reason being the variance in the deck heights of the engine, how much the manifolds have been cut, this, that, the heads have been cut, and then if you, years ago where we used to go cut 125 here to 0 here and lay the combustion chambers down, it changed angles. Of course, then we had to remachine that to get the right angles again. But it just, the way cork was the thing years ago, but it just still seems to work and work well, and I like it because it just doesn't squish out or blow out as easy.
So yeah, that's a real quick tip on putting the cork gaskets to do your intake manifolds. With that, guys, we'll be right back. All right, real quick here, guys, before we actually get to putting the intake manifold on, this is a really crucial step here. So we're using ARP fasteners here, and if you look here, it has a chamfer. You see that chamfer right in there and the bottom's flat? The chamfer is going to go towards the head of the bolt like that. That's a crucial step. Another crucial step, since you're going into aluminum with this steel bolt, if you look here, what Jimmy's doing is he's got a Q-tip and some ARP fastener lubricant, and he's going into each thread. And what that's going to do is that's going to help prevent it from galling and making things messy with, steel to aluminum. You want to do that so things don't get bound up, gall, and have the chance to break if you ever need to take this off. The reason why that he's actually putting it on here, well, it's a cleanliness thing. If you put it on the actual bolt and you start putting it through the intake manifold,
it squishes out.
It squishes out, and you also run the risk of getting it all over the intake manifold and making a mess.
Well, it won't seal right.
And it won't seal right. So all he's doing right now is he's going through and he's putting the ARP fastener lubricant into the actual cylinder head threads on all of them. While he's doing that, I'm matching up all my hardware, and I'm putting all the bolts with the washers on there. And the nice part about this ARP kit, it does provide you ample amount of hardware for it, the exact amount of hardware for it. And also, the nice part about a small block Chevy, they're all the same length, so you can't really mix it up.
One other thing about this ARP lube for their bolts that they suggest for their bolts is a lot of people don't pay attention to things sometimes, unfortunately. But the deal is, even intake manifold bolts have a torque spec. And if you can't bring the torque spec up right, if you don't have the proper, you should have the proper lube, like ARP says, use on their bolts.
So yeah, that's where we're at right now, is we're just getting stuff prepped and getting everything like that. And what I'm going to do now is just get the rest of these done. If you look here, this is the kit here if you want a reference number. This is the 134-2001 small block Chevy hex intake manifold bolt kit. There are different ones. This is one we chose, ARP. It's a good quality product. See you in a minute. All right, so now that we have things prepped, cleaned, we got the ARP fashion lubricant in there. Jimmy's doing the old school method to hold these into place and make sure they seal around the ports. He's adding a little bit more of that contact cement. We are using a Felpro gasket, and what's really nice about what he's doing with that is when you set this into place, not only is it creating an airtight seal along with any sort of liquids or anything like that, so no vacuum leaks. What it does is when you put these actually on the intake manifold, it holds it actually into place. I know in some cases when you put these on like this, what you're going to do is sometimes they don't want to hold into place. So you can actually get it with that contact lubricant or the contact cement and get it held into place exactly where you want it. This is also a step where we're going to use just a little bit of RTV, and Jimmy will show you why on that. We are using a Felpro gasket on these. Also, real quick, guys, I should have shown this at the beginning of the video, but in the Holley kit, it does come with different variable plugs for the intake manifold on that for whatever reason, if you have a water temp sensor or if you're going to block that off or a vacuum port. So yes, it does come with those. We're not actually going to put those in this video today. The reason being is we're going to end up putting this on a run stand, and we're not sure exactly which ports we're going to use at this time and not. Just wanted to throw it out there. It does come complete with that. And more importantly, it does come with a Holley equipped decal, and those are always cool to have for your toolboxes. Or the window, or your car. Whatever you want to do with it. Works out very well like that. So I do have all my hardware prepped over here. And now what I'm going to do, as Jimmy's getting the RTV, I am going to find the right tools. Be right back. All right, now that I got my tools, Jimmy's just going around with a little bit of RTV gray. And all that's going to do is help seal up all those ports so there's no vacuum leaks and has a nice tight seal. That contact cement was used around the outside of the water jackets. He hasn't done this one yet, which we'll show you in a second. And that's going to hold everything into place. And if you see here, he's taking a nice little bead of that RTV gray along the china rail and the cork, and that also provides a little bit of better sealing on that. Tools needed for this, since I am using ARP bolts. It's got a 3/8 head. So what I'm going to do is I have a wrench here that's 3/8. Reason being, sometimes doing an intake manifold to get tight in, and it's got a 1/4 inch small ratchet with a short socket. What Jimmy's going to do is he's going to put that into place, and I'm going to run an intake bolt in. My hand one to Jimmy. Always be careful with hardware around your oil valve here. You don't want to drop anything down in there. That would be absolutely not a good thing.
Well, actually, we're pretty safe on this one. Not like
Not like a
Some
Ford.
engines are open.
Some like big block Ford, very open in there, get down in there.
And big block Chevy.
And a big block Chevy. But so yeah, he's just getting everything tacked into place. And you'll get a better view of that when he goes to do this side. Now mind you, before we do any of this, like we said at the beginning of the video, we took acetone to wipe everything down. These are just meant to hold things in place as it sets up. This is a street car engine. It's not a drag racing engine, but you know what? Those old drag racing tricks, they do carry over into the world of street cars. And yeah, is this a little bit hard to get off if you ever had to? Yeah, but you know what? The whole idea behind this is just do it right. First time, make sure it seals. And you know, that way my friend Todd, when he's out cruising, he doesn't have to worry about any leaks. So now as you see what he's going to do, he's going to run another small bead along the back China rail, a little bit of RTV gray. And kind of important is the transition here from the cylinder head to the China rail. Those are always spots known to develop leaks. So if you look here and here and here and here, it's a little bit thicker. What that's going to do is when you squish down that intake manifold, it's going to make a nice tight seal on there. So he's just going along. He's doing his bead on there. If you ever did have to take this intake manifold off, the nice thing about using this RTV, it does come off easily. Little tip with that, when you go to clean everything off, you're going to make sure your oil galley is, you know, put towels or whatever in there. Make sure nothing falls down in there.
And if you do get anything in there, vacuum sweeper works very well, believe it or not.
All right, so he's just adding a little bit more on there. Getting everything nice and I call gooey. Gonna hand him the Felpro gasket on that and 2 more bolts.
Oh, you switched ends on me. I was if you do the other end, that's okay.
So these are just to hold things into place where you want it as that contact cement sets up. And now if you do look closely on these heads, they do not have a heat riser port on there, the crossover, but the gaskets do, but that does not make any difference.
I missed it. This is just to keep oil from coming up.
All these little things Jimmy's doing with this, everyone has their own way, but Jimmy's been doing this for over 50 years, and he has found ways that work very well. And these are the type of things I like learning from him. And if you get a little bit in intake port when it's wet, all you can do is just, you know, wipe it on out. And it's going to dry up anyway. It's not going to hurt anything. And just looking here, actually looks nice and clean. With that, guys, we're going to let that set up. See you in a minute. All right, Jimmy's just going down, getting things firmed into place. Real quick, guys, a lot of people will look for port alignment with gaskets and intake manifold. With these Brodix IK200 heads, these gaskets and intake, we already checked. Everything lines up really good. No gasket port matching was needed to be done on this. You want to call it lucky? No, I'm not calling it lucky. I'm calling it quality products.
I would say that Holley and Brodix were conversed on it, and Holley probably talked to Brodix on how big the ports are, and you know they worked hand in hand on it. Gasket worked out good. Everything worked out good.
Yeah, so that was one step. Now, if you ever come into a case where it doesn't match, we'll do a video on it someday of how to gasket match. I did it on my big block Ford, but we'll do another one at some point.
Okay, I think it's safe to take these out.
Okay, so I'm going to take the hardware out. I'm going to set it back over here. And now what happened is the intake manifold gaskets are actually held into place. All right. So what Jimmy's going to do now, just like he did on the back side of that, He's going to add a little bit, just a fine bead of that RTV.
More like a fine smear with my finger.
Yeah, along that.
Well, see, the blue rings around the ports and the water jackets, that is a factory sealer. So basically, all I'm doing is making sure that no oil gets past it. That's all I'm doing.
So if you look here, there's a line. You'll see it on this side. Oil splashes up. You don't want to get that anywhere near your intake ports. So he's just going through along there to make sure if oil does come up, it's not going to get past the gasket into the intake port.
Or in case you had a extreme amount of blow-by, like for whatever reason, breathers failed, you pick the reason. It just wouldn't force a bunch of oil up through there. It shouldn't anyhow, but it's just to safeguard it. Never hurts to be safe.
So now if you look, it does have a little bit of a safeguard in there, as Jimmy said, with a little bit of a smear of the RTV gray. And he's got the gasket maker along the China rails, and it's especially important on the corners. If you ever work in the world of big block Mopars, you know that, but that applies to all the engines. All right.
Yeah, if the, you still on?
Yeah.
If the, being an old drag racer myself, I run blown big block Chevys as well as blown small blocks, nitro on both, and alcohol on both, gas on both. With it being said, if the public knew half of what about the drag racers or how they have their engines glued together in some cases, they'd be amazed.
Yeah. Old drag racer trick. So now it's time to put the intake manifold on. We did clean the bottom of this, so it does have proper adhesion. But what you want to do is you want to make sure you go down evenly with this onto those gaskets.
And square.
And square, yes.
So you don't have to shift it back and forth.
Yes. So Jimmy's going to take one end real quick, and I'm going to take the other. And we're going to go down nice and even here. And we're going to line that up and get it into place and line those holes up. There we go. And this is here where you're going to put a couple bolts in to hold it into place. I'm just getting them started, nothing insane.
And if you ever see anybody trying to fix a real quick oil leak at the racetrack with duct tape, trust me, 200-mile-an-hour duct tape is a racer's best friend.
Yes. So all we're doing now is we're just getting these started by hand. I've already got my tools ready to go.
I used to see them duct tape pieces of funny car bodies back together. They don't do it much anymore, but years ago when they were fiberglass, they used to do that a lot.
Yeah. Well, that old funny car body. Here you go, Jimmy. I got it.
You got the 716?
I got, no, it's 3/8. Here you go.
3/8?
Yeah. Yep.
That's not what I was looking for.
Where you?
I was wanting the ratchet wrench.
Oh. So yeah, you just get them down finger tight. And what we're going to do, Jimmy's going to start on that side. I'm going to start on this. Whoop. Start on this side. Kick my camera.
And I'm just going to barely snug them. We're going to start in the middle. Then we're going to work our way to both ends. I guess there's one thing we should have done and we didn't do it. Doggone it.
What's that?
Probably should have laid that gasket on here, drew around it, and cut off the excess.
Ah, it's all right.
I know, but I like turning that stuff.
Valve covers will kind of hide some of that. It looks nice. This is also a really good looking intake. Holley does design things for performance, but I'm telling you right now, their products are always just good looking products.
Well, they've been making carburetors for how many years?
A very long time, I know that. In fact, this is getting the Quick Fuel Technologies 750 CFM double pumper carburetor.
Okay, you're gonna have to bring that socket over here. This one. Oops, sorry.
So he's just getting those nice and snugged up. He's following a sequence that works very well. Real quick, guys, one thing about this is if these were like a used head and all that, you would want to go through and chase all the threads on them. These are brand new heads, so we didn't have to do that. But it does have a nice instruction manual with this on how to hook everything up. Like I said, we're not going to put any plugs or anything in these yet. Reason being is we got to determine which ones we're going to use and why, because this is going to go on an engine run test stand so when we go to break in that camshaft. So he's just getting all that snugged up. This isn't rocket science. It's just really just doing it right.
Get your ARP chart or see how much torque is on these things.
All right, so I'm going to check, see what the torque spec is, what ARP recommends.
Or maybe.
And the ARP
Maybe
does not have a torque spec on these. So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to go look, see what the torque spec is on that. I'll be right back.
I'll just look it up for stock Chevy.
All right, well, we found the torque spec. It is 30 foot-pounds on the intake manifold, and it's just going to be at one sequence. So it's just going to be like on other videos where you just do one even swoop to get that 30 foot-pounds.
We're in trouble.
Oh, those. Well, I got a swivel. I know that's not the most preferred way to do it, but.
Okay, well, find me a swivel and something, a short socket or something I can do the.
Okay.
Don't back up.
All right, just get some tools here for Jimmy. If you notice, in some cases, these are kind of hard to get to with a socket. But you know what? We're going to get it. So he's just going through regular torque sequence, 30 foot-pounds.
You free checking? This manifold won't crawl because of these.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Crawl.
Yeah, it's not going to move. Here you go. Preferably, you don't want to use a lot of any.
That's not gonna work.
No, it's not.
No, going back to the way I was.
All right. So a lot of times, what you don't want to do, he's going to hand do these. He's been doing this for a long time. He'll be able to feel what it feels like. So if you don't know there, he's just getting a feeling. Just kind of hard to get in here sometimes with these. So he's just going to go ahead and tighten stuff down.
When your shoulder pops, that means it's tight.
Yeah.
Not much I can do. We'll do it this way. You don't have one of them offset wrenches, do you?
I do.
3/8?
I do have an offset. It's 3/8.
Not one of them?
No, here.
Oh, cool. Goes a little bit longer.
Yep. So you're just going to get those nice and snug. And what's going to happen as, you know,
Pushed out gasket.
yeah, we're just making this where it needs to be. We have the gaskets in there, and we have that gasket seal and all that. That's going to make a really nice tight seal evenly across this. We're not starting this anytime soon. If you were going to want to start this after doing this, you'd want to let it sit 24 to 48 hours for all that sealant to actually seal up. But this isn't going to be started for probably about a week, so we're all good to go. So yeah, that's how you get everything nice and tightened up. Well, we're going to call that a wrap. Pretty successful. You know what, guys? This engine's really starting to come together. Waiting on a couple parts, water pump, pulleys, stuff like that. To throw this thing on the engine test stand, get the cam broke in, run it. Most importantly, see what it sounds like, and just have a whole lot of fun. It's getting almost close to spring, and Todd really wants his 1980 Camaro Z28 Project Fast Times on the road, hitting the streets, having a good time. But yeah, in this video, guys, what we showed you is our way on how to install an intake manifold. It's pretty cut and dry, really. Basic tools, a really good Holley intake, ARP hardware, a little bit of sealant, a little contact cement, and most importantly, just a little bit of time and focus. After that, we did have some time. I threw on these nice Chevrolet valve covers, pre-fit the carburetor on there, water neck, just a lot of little odds and ends. But you know what? It's been a really long day at Jimmy's shop. We still have a whole lot more to do on some other engines. But you know what, guys? We are getting so much closer to making noise in this 388 cubic inch small block Chevy. Can't wait to fire it up. Can't wait to see the grin on Todd's face. And you know what I'm really looking forward to? When this thing's in the car, going for a ride, grabbing a burger, having a good time with some friends. And you know what? Overall, this thing's coming together. It's really cool. Till next time, Project Fast Times, it's almost done. See you soon.